always welcome, Chief Executive. Ross, good afternoon and welcome. So we've had the Mayor of Wairoa here today as well, Your Worship, but to have two worships in one day is gratifying. 10 minutes, the usual, starting now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and councillors. Good afternoon. This is a relatively short submission, and I know it's the end of the day. I suppose, and you've got it before you, the substantive one for us is actually around support for the purchase of the Waipariki motor camp, effectively. And I've read your officer's report indicating that effectively there is no funding resource available, nor is there a funding resource available in Hastings. We have committed to borrow the money though, because we see this as a one-off opportunity. If the three councils can get together, put in $300,000 each, we can effectively purchase a piece of land and save it for the public of Hawke's Bay. Because if we don't, eventually it'll be secured by private interests and it will be lost to the people of the region. So I'm not sure when Chris Tremaine is speaking to you, if he hasn't. He's spoken already, and I have no knowledge of the Napier position on this. But in our view, this is a sort of a unique opportunity that presents itself, up in Councillor Graham. A unique opportunity that presents itself, and we're raising it as such at the moment. In our view, it does require funding from all the councils. If we look at, from the Hastings perspective, it is at the northern boundary, the northern end of our district, in terms of a beach anyway. We have other competing pressures, and you've just heard before us, are on the Cape Coast and all the rest of it. But we think this is a strategic investment. It wasn't in our plan, it's come along, and we've set some money aside to fund it. And we're effectively asking you to do the same. In terms of other things, the open space funding for Te Mata Park, we support you retaining that, and as I've read, I understand the decision's pretty much been made to do that, and we're very grateful for that. In terms of Pakawhai Country Park, we've written here and we're honouring effectively an arrangement we've tried to come up with Gary Clode and co to say, can we jointly fund what's left to be done at the Pakawhai Country Park, including the extension, and we are committed to providing the money to do our share of that, which I think is around 50-50. Mike or somebody else might remember where we've sort of got to. So our council has pretty much said our preference is to use the money, the $500,000 for Te Mata Park, for us to fund our share of the Pakawhai Country Park, and for $300,000 to come from a new funding source from the Regional Council, just like it's come from a new funding source from Hastings District Council. And in closing, we also support further work being done on State Highway 2 and the corridor study and the Regional Land Transport Plan. We actually see that as a critical growth project for this region. There's actually a lot of opportunity between here and Gisborne, particularly between here and Wairoa, and how we manage that corridor is a key strategic issue for us. We know that you're working hard on working out whether rail has got a viable future or not, and that hopefully will come to some fruition soon. But the work we've done and supporting the RED strategy has indicated that that's a key strategic route. Our council is happy to support that as a high priority for further investment in transport. When you look across the region as what's required, in our view, that's where the money is required, and we support you continuing that corridor study. So that's all I wish to say, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions, Councillor Dick.
Oh, thanks. It will be helpful to us in terms of the transport study issue for this mysterious and elusive REDS strategy to actually emerge.
Correct.
I felt quite frustrated about the fact it's taken so long, and that in effect we're kept in the dark, or we seem to be kept in the dark. Anyway, my point is that if that comes out and that reinforces the points that you've made, then that would help us in the Transport Committee to get that corridor study, you know, right up the list.
Correct. My understanding is that the RED strategy is likely to come out towards the end of July. It's largely been dominated by government decision-making regimes, but I also understand that the councils are likely to be briefed before that time about what's in it. And if we can get everything lined up, then I think everything you're wanting to do and what we're saying here will actually come to fruition.
Further questions, Councillor Scott?
Thank you, Mayor Yule, for your submissions on some fairly important open spaces. Where do you see the value of the Waipariki Beach Holiday Park? You've read the councillor's response to it. You've seen that it's on the cusp of proceed or not proceed. Is it public access to the beach? Is it a chance for a particular style of holiday close to the urban areas? Where do you see the advantages of keeping this in public ownership?
Well, the advantage, in my view, is quite simple. There are fewer and fewer of these type of camping grounds left in New Zealand because they're being purchased by private property developers and houses are going on them. And we've had experience, as you know, in Clifton where, you know, erosion has taken its hold. But if you go out there, you'll see over the summer period hundreds of people enjoying a coastal holiday, just as they do in Waipariki and other parts. And our view is that this is strategic because if we don't take this opportunity and secure this, where else will we find another opportunity that we can take advantage of? So a number of people have been working to try and secure this. My real plea is that actually the owner is offering an incredibly favourable terms for this to be purchased by the public at the moment. We have some public ability to fund this, even though that's a choice that has to be made. My council has said that actually this is important to us, and all I'm asking that in the long-term future of this region, the securing of this piece of land for public good in terms of a motor or accommodation for a camping ground, I think would be well received by the public of Hawke's Bay.
No other questions, Councillor Dick?
Yeah, Lawrence, the essential point of difference or attraction for this camping ground would be its coastal location,
Correct.
Wouldn't it?
Correct.
I mean, I don't think you couldn't argue it on pure demand issues because, well, I know we're actually pretty well endowed with camping grounds throughout the region.
Yep.
And in fact, they're only full totally from Christmas Eve until the end of the New Year. After that, you can get a space virtually any time. So it doesn't justify itself on demand factors, but I can certainly see the point of the unique coastal.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if this camping ground wasn't on the coast, I wouldn't even be here talking about it. But there are very few coastal camping grounds left, and they're getting harder to maintain.
But isn't that the point that you have an opportunity now that if it's not taken, you'll never get again in another 200 years? The second thing is
that's our view, and we've been convinced by talking to the owners about this. We've got valuations and all sorts of things, and our view is that actually the terms of this deal, if it can be pulled off, are very favourable, and in the long term will be a very good deal.
And secondly, that it adjoins other land that if councils in the future wished to purchase and make into parks and so on, it makes an attractive addition. But without this keystone piece of property, it's never going to work.
Yes, that's absolutely a possibility, although we're just trying to bike off one bit at a time.
But if you don't have this, the rest of it don't work.
Correct.
Thank you. Do you wish to add anything, Mr. McLeod?
I just want to add a bit of a bouquet really related to the Pakawhai Country Park, and that's sort of quite closely related and located by the Whakatu arterial route roading project, and I really just want to thank particularly to Mike and his team, Gary Clode, for the assistance that they've given our team in getting that project to stack up. It probably wouldn't be in the position it is without that input and a really practical level of assistance. So just want to acknowledge that in front of the council, Mr Chairman.
And I further to that, if councillors aren't aware of that, there's been a really good working relationship to reduce the cost of that Whakatū arterial by changing the layout of the stream, by shortening the bridge, by allowing greater embankments. So it's been a very collaborative effort. And when I went through that with the council, you know, to say, well, why would we make a commitment in here? They got that and said, yeah, we're happy to stump up with our share. That's really good.
We're out of time, but thank you very much for your presentation and your submission, and Councillor Graham will be ringing you later with a comment, apparently.
It's Hawea Park on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
In respect to our hapu partners, not Parkawhai.
Anyway.
Oh, my apologies.
Anyway. Yeah. Leave it in the bin on the way out as you take your chief executive.
We do electronic payments.
Buy your
the other side's been guaranteed.
Buy your chief executive a well-deserved beer, I think, after all that. Your Worship, thank you very much. Right, we have 4 more to go, starting with Ms. Pauline Elliott is here, I think. No, thank you, guys. Thank you. So this is submission number 59. And welcome.
Thank you, Chair and Council.
So you know the drill, I suspect. 10 minutes, please.
Yes, indeed.
We're on the home straight. So
yes,
welcome.
I'm aware that you're near the end of a very long day, and I have no doubt that many of my comments have already been traversed, so I will try and make it as brief as possible. And the submission is on the proposed amendment to the long-term plan. And I must say that I feel a bit like a grandmother who got the email from Nigeria saying, if you give us your bank account details, we'll make you very rich. While that might seem a bit harsh, to me, this proposal has about the same level of integrity. I must first, however, make a correction to my written submission. The suggested alternative to the concession deed clause was first presented at HBRC meeting of the 24th of February, not the 30th of March, as I stated. And if you recall, was worded, HBRC is proposing that Regional Council removes the provision described and replaces it with a 35-year water user contract. In exchange, HBRC will receive a total of 30 million cubes of water over 6 years at no cost. We did have, in that draft concession deed, agreed 3 years ago, provision to take and pay for up to 4 million cubes of water in any 1 year if needed. In quite a lot less than 3 months, that option was off the table. It seems to me this proposal is not about environmental flushes and flows. It's not about public good. It is about securing a confirmed revenue from this council and its ratepayers that will satisfy an investor. An investor, incidentally, that we were told would be announced at the end of March, and here we are in June and still no announcement. I'm sure, well, at least I wonder, once we get over this particular hurdle, and if the decision to commit $1 million per year is made, that the mysterious investor will be announced. Referring to a paper produced recently by Regional Council officers that states information supplied by the investment company estimates that if all of the water was paid for, including the 34 million cubes provided at zero cost, then the 35-year value of the water, if sold to other foundation users, would be approximately 44.5 million. HBRC has advised that the cost of the current proposal to Council will be 36.9 million, and goes on to say that revenue foregone by RWLP to deliver flows to council for environmental benefits equates to approximately 7.6 million, a proxy value for the environmental benefits delivered. This premise assumes that there is a queue of potential users pounding at the door to take water from day one. Given the very long and costly exercise of getting water users to sign up so far, this is a rather flawed assumption. We have been told that because there will be an excess of water available in the early years, we can have it for free, on the condition that we sign up for the rest of a 35-year agreement. We are also told now, at the 11th hour, that if we commit to buying 4 million cubes of water each year, HBRC could be in a position to pay earlier dividends, which could then be used for environmental purposes. That seems to me rather like putting $1 on the nose of a horse that's paying 90 cents, and surely tells us that the financial viability of this scheme was perhaps not well considered or well communicated. And to mitigate, I just want to talk about spot water briefly, to mitigate any risk, we are told that if it transpires that we don't need the water in any 1 year, or in any 4 or 5 years, we can sell it on the spot market. How does this work? If high rainfall is the reason that we don't need it, who else is likely to need it? And are we competing with other farmers who have also been told they can sell excess water on the spot market? Who manages this trading? As the biggest water user in the scheme, we could reasonably expect to have the most to sell. As the biggest water trade, would we be disadvantaging other users who are relying on the spot market just as much as we would be? We are told that over the period of free water, a more detailed assessment of the environmental benefits that could be achieved, together with which environmental projects would benefit most, will be developed by Council. Councillor Bevan suggested to this Council back in February, March, that it is this sort of detailed assessment that should be done before committing $40-odd million. This would be the course, I believe, of a responsible council, and it is what we would expect of any other investment of this, or even much less magnitude. We apparently don't have that option. HBRC demands a decision now. It is not negotiable, and there will not be an option in the future. In my view, this is an untenable position. Ratepayers and you, our regional council, are being held at gunpoint by your own wholly owned investment company. As Councillor Dick reminded us, there are 6 catchments within this region, and the Tuki Tuki is just one. Now, I want to make it clear that should the dam proceed, and should we need water in the future, I'm not opposed to this council buying water from the scheme per se. If a valid research and planning determines that it would be the highest priority over other emerging or potential projects, and there are certainly to be many over the next 35 years. We've just heard submission on Cape Coastal, in need of an enormous amount of work and resource. We have the work of a tank group, we have Hiratonga Plains, Ahuriri Estuary, every bit I read as valued as Hatuma, and probably many more that we haven't yet considered. And I just wanted to note, this probably won't be able to see this, but it appeared in last Friday's paper, and there was the commentary says, talks about the rainfall, in fact, in particular the May rainfall, which was well below average last month. Napier recorded less than 1/5 of its May average, Hastings less than 1/3 of its average, Wairoa just 16% of its May average. There was more rain in central and southern Hawke's Bay. The average across 5 stations on the Ruataniwha Plains was 58%, Waipukara having the highest at 72%. Why would we be rushing in to spend $1 million a year on water for possibly a region that has the highest rainfall? And I did just want to finish on a point about consultation, and I know that none of you need reminding about this, but I've often thought about a point on consultation made by Justice McEakin, which is now quite famous. And he said, consultation involves the statement of a proposal not yet fully decided upon, listening to what others have to say, considering their responses, and then deciding what will be done. Implicit in the concept is a requirement that the party consulted will be, or will made to be, adequately informed so as to be able to make intelligent and useful responses. It is also implicit that the party obliged to consult, while quite entitled to have a working plan in mind, must keep its mind open and be ready to change and even start afresh. And I am trusting that this is the case with this round of consultation to the amendment to the LTP. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've got 42 seconds. Just order, everyone, and keep your excitement low, please. Questions? We have time for one question. There being none, thank you very much for your submission and your presentation.
Thank you.
Ms. Elliott, and we'll be deliberating on this tomorrow. The hearing will resume at 11, not 9 as advertised, so sorry about that if there's any confusion, but I have been repeating that all day. Okay, Mr. Garth Eyles, number 60. And I see Garth here. Welcome, Garth. Oh, there we go. We're out of... You know the drill. You're all over. No. No, it's not quite as bad as
Thank
that.
you.
10 minutes. Yeah. Cheers.
In the 8 years since I retired, I made a point of not making any submissions, but I've got rather annoyed about this particular issue, and so I've broken my own rule, basically so that I can sleep at night, at least having said that I spoke out. My basic position is the Board of Inquiry requires the Regional Council to maintain the overall quality of fresh water within the region and to improve the quality of fresh water in water bodies that have been degraded to the point of being over-allocated. And what I see this $34 million doing is asking the Regional Council to buy the water to do what we've already been required to do. So I think the only fair and honest option is option C. The examples that were given in the paper for requiring this 34 million dollars, sorry, I think was the designers of it looked at all the nice environmental things that would touch our emotions and put them up. And so of course we would look at the environmental things, we would fund the environmental things that are good for the region. Look, for example, Lake Hartuma. Of course, some more water flowing through Hartuma would be good. But if you look at the management plan that we did for Hartuma probably 15 years ago now, the basic requirement in Hartuma is to raise the water level another 300 mils. And that could be done very cheaply by just putting some concrete blocks on the existing outlet. We had a local committee, we had a plan, we had everything worked out, but one of the adjacent farmers said, "I'll see you in court." He wasn't going to have us raise the level at all, and at that stage it was just decided to walk away and leave it till the next generation of people, right? So if the water supply remains as it's currently from the farmlands and from the Ngahapi stream, if that area around the water comes in to the lake from those two sources, if the area around the lake is irrigated, the water that comes in, of course, will have more nutrient in it. Right? Therefore, I think it's the council's job to make sure that water quality is maintained at least as what it is now. If the water is used as a conduit through the lake to the outlet stream as part of an irrigation scheme. It would change the whole ecology of the lake, and I would assume that would be very closely researched before that decision was made. All right? And if the water is supplied directly from the river, which presumably wouldn't be polluted, but I don't know if it would be or not, with the only function to supply clean water for the health of the lake, that would be good if the level was raised. Can anyone tell me how that water is going to be brought to the lake? Is it going to be pumped, or is it going to be gravity fed?
Ian Maxwell could have probably described it best out of any of us, but he's not here. But my understanding is the majority of it would be by way of the river channel, and then pumped from there.
So it would have to be pumped, and so it'd be quite expensive water getting there. You know, if it was purely and simply for the function of improving the water quality. Is it?
No one knows, but we've seen a plan. It's a big dive.
Yeah, it's one of the things, you see, we're asked to approve this, and yet we're not provided with the background information for any ratepayer to make a logical decision. It's, trust me, we know this is what we want you to put a tick on, right? It's what I call tick box consultation, which I don't like. We talk about increased flushing flows for the mainstream rivers. Well, this is something that always intrigues me, because if you're going to flush a river naturally, you get a rainfall and the water comes down the river and flows up. In this case, we're trying to say the water is going to be flushed by coming up the stream. You know, one, it's pushing water uphill, which is predictably pretty difficult, and two, all the biodiversity in those rivers aren't used to the water that going that way. It's used to it coming this way. So I would suggest that there would be quite a number of environmental issues with doing that. And you could only do it up the top, perhaps, where the water is very flat. On any slope at all, you wouldn't be able to do it. And further downstream, where the wave, the so-called wave of water coming down, wouldn't have as much strength, it'd be even more difficult. All right? So I think it is one of those things that touches the environmental, massages the environmental conscience, but isn't very useful. The opening of the river mouths sort of got up my nose too, putting it colloquially, because as you're aware, the mouth of the river is blocked when you get an easterly or a southerly, and the gravel is built up. The pressure builds up from the river behind to the extent that then you can release it and it goes out normally. All right. Well, why do you need more flushing out of the river mouth when it's a natural process that brings it in? I would have assumed that when the analysis was done and put to the board that there was a certain number of openings required a year, that would have been based on the engineering science of averages per year, right? If you are going to do it another 5 times and the river's not shut, a bit of a waste of time, you know. That seems to me to be a major fallacy in the system. And they seem to have been asked to approve the additional spending of $36 million to allow HBRC to experiment and research environmental enhancement options consequent on the irrigation scheme being approved. The examples listed are all things that should have been worked through prior to the consent having been approved. All right? With a gold-plated engineering project worth almost $1 billion by the time it's finished, it should be assumed that adequate environmental research has been done, all right, as part of the planning process. It appears we're now being asked to fund this research, which should have been done, all right? So that's basically my concern, and this is why I submitted. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Eyles, for your submission. Just that final point, that why was the work not done before the Board of Inquiry made its decision? I guess I need to refer you to the officer's report when it actually states on responses that a range of experts from all sides of the debate about storage proposal agreed the water for environmental purposes would be beneficial. We're not talking about the effect of the stream on the river. We're talking about opportunity to access water for the river. So a public good, not the effects of the stream, which is totally taken care by the consent conditions. So would you agree that, with the experts, that there are a range of benefits over and above what the scheme has to deliver that would be beneficial to the river?
The more water you put down that flows down the river, the more benefits you will have, yes. Right? But why do we have to pay $34 million to get what should be there anyway?
Thank you. Councillor Belford.
Mr. Eyles, you're one of the most seasoned public servants to come before us, knowledgeable about the issues you're speaking to here. In your experience, have you ever seen this council endorse a $36 million project or set of projects with as little evidence put before it?
I don't really need to answer that.
Please do.
No, I've never seen that.
Thank you. Councillor Barker.
Thinking about the $36 million that's being invested here, you've said there's no science plan, not thought through like you'd expected. Wouldn't you also have expected that with this sort of investment, you would have had some cost-benefit analysis of putting this amount of money into the Tukituka River, as opposed to the Ngārororo, as opposed to the Wairoa River, as opposed to any range of other things? Why would you think a council would just go and pick a winner out of the hat overnight, Tukituki, to the exclusion of all others?
Oh, I haven't thought along those lines, because we're talking about the Tukituk. I didn't think of it in terms compared with other rivers. I would presume if you're looking at the other rivers with similar schemes, you'd go through a similar process.
But it is opportunity cost, isn't it?
Well, we're only talking about this particular scheme. Yeah. You know.
Thank you. Well, we're out of time. Actually, I'll ask you first next time, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Eyles. Thank you for your submission and your presentation. And as you're probably aware, we'll be dealing with the decisions tomorrow. Yeah. And thank you. Good to see you again. Okay.